Well, we're seeing more destructive and costly weather events fueled by our warming planet. According to NOAA, the average number of billion-dollar events has doubled in the last 5 years. Those events include severe storms, flooding, hurricanes, and drought.
Last year, the U.S. saw a record number of so-called billion-dollar disasters, 28 in total, with a price tag of $92.9 billion.
Just even almost hard to even conceptualize
yeah.
that. The cost to repair and rebuild goes beyond dollars and cents. Of course, there's also an emotional component.
Yeah, CBS News correspondent Jon Vigliotti has spent years in the field reporting on these disasters and talking to survivors. He joins us now to talk about his new book, focusing on these climate victims before it's gone. Jonathan, thanks for coming on to talk about this. We want to start in Lahaina, Hawaii. That's where your book also starts. We had that big wildfire last year. What lessons would you say we actually learned from that deadly fire?
It's a great question. As I've learned covering these storms and specifically what happened in Lahaina, before every disaster, there is usually a scientist who has been ignored. So my team and I, we were one of the first crews to arrive in what was left of downtown Lahaina. And I describe it in my book as an environmental holocaust. You all know the scenes, home after home, business after business destroyed. And in the days and weeks that followed this disaster, we heard from local leaders who described this fire as an explosion. It was like a bomb going off, they said, as if to imply there was no time to take action. But as we learned, there was a nearly decade-long fuse that could have been put out at any point, because in 2014, so 9 years before this disaster, scientists on the island came out with a report saying that climate change was warming up the island, making it vulnerable to wildfire. They even provided measures that could be implemented to reduce the risk, reducing and removing dry invasive grasses, restoring wetlands, conserving water, and building and updating homes with more fire-resistant materials, which qualified for tax credits and reduced the cost of a monthly insurance bill. But ultimately, that plan was essentially ignored and put away, and action wasn't taken. The question that I explore in the book is, so what could have happened? And in the miles-long destruction, and this was something that we covered for CBS and on the Weather Channel, there was a home with the red roof, as it is known today locally. This was a home whose homeowners implemented those scientific remedies, specifically to fight termites. But every single step they took, from using fire-resistant material to putting a stone moat around their house, also protected it from wildfire. And across the country, through every storm by a different name in different communities, there are examples of homes with the red roof. People who were empowered to take action on their own to protect their property.
So, Jonathan, let's talk a little bit more about that, because there is this ongoing debate. Should we even rebuild in these risky areas? So what do you think people, what do you hear from people when they talk about maybe rebuilding or leaving what has possibly been their home for their whole life when you talk about rebuilding in these risky areas?
There's this one family that I have known, and I first met 6 months after the Camp Fire, which destroyed Paradise. Kylie and Ellie Warble, mother and daughter team. They never thought anything like this could happen to them. They were caught in that fire. They escaped and made it out. But they immediately wanted to return to rebuild. And many people, including their families who left, said, what are you thinking? Why would you want to move back to a community? First, the tradition that they had in this community meant so much to them. But second, they saw an opportunity, even in all of the ash, to rebuild in a safer way. So they created a fire defensible space by removing those grasses and trees too close to their home. Power lines were put underneath. They think that with the fire-resistant materials of their new home, they are now safer. But time and time again, we hear from people moving into communities that are vulnerable and at risk of destruction from extreme weather events. I was looking into the research here. Risk mitigation firm Aon, which tracks real estate, shows in the past 40 years, 6 times more people have moved into risky coastal communities than into safer inland communities. These aren't people that are trying to put their families at risk. They have 30-year mortgages. They believe that their homes will survive that long. I think it's critical for anybody in any community to look at the flood zones that they're in, to look at what impacts their community, their homes could face, and to update their homes accordingly. There's federal funding available, and it's important for people to take the initiative to find out if they qualify for it. There's an interesting toolkit that the government puts out. It's literally called toolkit.climate.gov. And if you log on, you can see if your home applies for credits. So you can get up to 50% in federal funding to save on the cost of whatever it is that your home is required to.
Jonathan, we only have about 30 seconds. Why did you really decide to focus on the small towns in this book?
These are communities that don't have the same kind of engineering and infrastructure that big cities have. So they feel the impacts of these disasters much more. I call them the canaries in the coal mine because this is what larger cities are going to face more and more as Mother Nature outpaces all of our modern tools to hold her back. We've seen this in New York City with Superstorm Sandy, and we will continue, unfortunately, see more of this unless we make our communities more resilient.
Well, Jonathan Vigliotti, thank you for writing this book. Thank you for bringing attention to it. And thank you for all the tough reporting that you do out there in really tough conditions as well.
Thank you so much.
And I don't know if Jonathan feels this or if you have felt this. We've all covered a lot of disasters. I leave a lot of times with guilt that I can just go home.
Yeah.
I even just got the chills thinking about all the places that I've seen that have been destroyed. And you get home and I just look at my bed and I do have a sense of guilt and I feel bad that I'm able to go back, to my home and to my bed.
You know what I've seen over and over again? It's that even when people have had maybe their homes destroyed or lost everything, they are still coming to us as we're covering it and saying, hey, do you need any water? We've got some water.
100%.
We've gotten some extra supplies from the Red Cross. Do you guys need anything?
That has happened to me as well.
It exacerbates the guilt that you're leaving, but then it also, it brings you that little spark of faith that's left in humanity still that I think is a reminder that, we can all come together in the worst situation.
And the communities always do. Everyone always comes together, and that's such a beautiful sight amidst destruction.
Yeah, it is.